And a lucky survivor, a woman pulled out of the rubble of New Zealand's earthquake. 98 people have died, hundreds more are missing. Libyan leader Muammar Gaddafi appears to be losing his grip on power. Protesters now say they've taken control in the east of the country and they're now planning a push on the capital, Tripoli. Here are the latest developments. President Barack Obama says the United States is looking at a, quote, full range of options on how to deal with the crisis. Along with European and other nations, officials are considering economic sanctions and freezing the assets of the Gaddafi family. Oil production is reportedly down a quarter, with 400,000 fewer barrels being pumped each day. European and Chinese oil firms are pulling out their staff and halting some output. At least 26 nations have also begun efforts to get their citizens out of Libya and to safety. A military Hercules aircraft is en route to Tripoli now to collect British citizens. And Turkey says it's mounted the biggest evacuation effort in its history. Well, thousands of people are leaving Libya to escape the violence. Some have been arriving back in the Algerian capital to be met by their families. They brought with them eyewitness accounts of the chaos in Libya.
There were bullets in the early evening everywhere. You could see it with your own eyes. If you go out, you would be killed. Even if you looked through the window, you'd be killed. We've hardly eaten anything over the last week. Thank God we made it back to Algeria. It's a blessing.
There were so many people, and I can't describe what it was like in Libya. So many foreigners were there, and suddenly everything came to an end. There was no one left there. We stayed alone, but we were so scared we had to stay in and not go out.
I feel like crying. I'm so happy to be back in Algeria. Thank God I escaped the carnage. Did you see Baghdad? It was just like being in Baghdad. They saw planes, helicopters, people screaming, women slaughtering people. There were about 60 dead people in the green square in the centre of Tripoli. These 60 people were slaughtered. Buildings, hotels, the Justice Ministry, they were burned down. We were just working there, trying to make a living. Thank God our president, bless him, has helped us. It took us 4 days to get to the airport. You need too many papers to leave the country.
AlJazeera's James Bays has just returned from Tripoli. We heard first-hand accounts of people caught up in the violence. He joins us now from our London studio. James, what did you hear and see?
We went into Tripoli on a transit flight. We had some 17 hours on the ground, and we left in the end on a plane that was organised by the British government. I can tell you that plane was half empty. Let me explain why. There is a big problem at Tripoli Airport. It's a place of panic, it's a place of chaos, people desperate to get out. The problem is that not only are there a lot of people inside the airport, there are very many sitting outside, including women and children, in the pouring rain, literally thousands there. Difficulty people getting tickets, difficulty for people to get the right stamps, the exit permits from the Libyan authorities. So lots of people gathered there. At times the police have not been letting them into the airport, they've been beating them back with sticks, and people just desperate to get out after what they've seen for the last few days inside Tripoli and across Libya. Just listen to the words of one language teacher who I spoke to on the plane from Tripoli to London.
We literally watched people being shot in the street. The police or whoever they were opened fire on the young guys who were walking down the street. This is after the pro-government rally in the Green Square. The police officers ran down the Mesran Street and they opened fire on the boys who had no weapons at all. We were on the roof, my colleagues and myself. They saw us on the roof and they opened fire on us as well, and then they threw gas canisters onto the roof, so we got gassed as well.
James, I wonder where were the vast majority of people hoping to get to?
Well, they're trying to get all over the region. There are people from mainly oil workers, but lots of other people who work in Libya trying to get to countries in North Africa, countries across Europe, and it's a real difficulty for them in that airport. There's limited supplies of food and water, and some people have been there for more than 3 days, not able to find any way out. I have to say the authorities there, not particularly helpful. There are lots of Libyan staff there. They haven't had much sleep. And there are also lots of not particularly helpful policemen, bureaucrats, secret policemen, customs officers, who really are not proving very helpful, but they are, I think it's fair to say, proving pretty loyal to the Gaddafi regime. It seems that that airport remains firmly under Gaddafi's control.
Yeah, I mean, it's fascinating because one wonders if they are all under a single unified command. Was that clear to you?
No, it's not clear. I tell you another thing, though, is that some signs of the decay, the end of a regime that I've experienced before seem to be now present in Libya. There are lots of people trying to get money off you, bribe you, anything you want to do in that airport. They're asking money for it. If you want to try and get right now from Tripoli to Tripoli airport, that used to be a $20 cab ride. It's now $200. It does feel as though things are coming to an end and the corruption is rising. Some people trying to make money, I think, in what they feel might be the dying days of Gaddafi's long term as president.
James, thanks a lot for that. James Bay is joining us live from London there. Now, 3,000 Turkish citizens have returned home from Libya. They arrived at the Mediterranean port of Marmaras on 2 ships sent by the country to evacuate them. At least 5,000 Turks have now left the country, out of a total of about 25,000 in the country. Meanwhile, more than 160 mostly Ukrainian nationals have arrived in Kiev after being evacuated from Libya on a military transport plane. Some have been speaking out about their experiences in Tripoli, including one doctor who treated many of the wounded. Now, there have been reports of desertions by members of the Libyan military, most notably the 2 fighter pilots who flew their jets to Malta a few days ago. But there remains a well-trained core group that remains loyal to Muammar Gaddafi. Lawrence Lee explains.
Libyan state television is relentless in its patriotism, fond of showing the glory of the country's army, even if large parts of it seem to have decided that Gaddafi is no longer worth fighting for. That in turn has raised the question of why he's still able to hold on, even if he is increasingly besieged in Tripoli. One answer appears to be that he still has some tribal support. A second, the presence of foreign fighters, mercenaries now in and around the capital. And the last is the brigade run by his son Khamis, thought to be the best trained in Libya. But where did they get their training from, these men and women, apparently prepared to fight to the death for Gaddafi? One answer comes via WikiLeaks, which has published cables showing how America has sought to arm and train the Libyan army, in particular, Khamis Gaddafi.
During recent meetings, Saif al-Islam al-Gaddafi's staff has shown an increased interest in bilateral military and security issues, particularly requests linked to Captain Khamis al-Gaddafi.
It goes on to talk about
the full range of military exchange and training opportunities that have been offered to the Libyans over the last year. He took particular interest in an offer made from Khamis to travel around the United